You ready? If there's no objection, we have two items on the agenda today. The second is to discuss an act on this proclamation resolution for the seniors graduating from the Block Island School. I'd like to take that up first, if you guys are okay with that. It's not up on Clerk Base, so I might as well read it. Whereas the Block Island School, its teachers and staff, and most importantly, its students are an essential part of the backbone of our community. And whereas the Block Island School is unique in many ways, notably in that the school reflects the community's values and encourages the engagement of residents in the shared priority of educating our young people. And whereas one of the great joys of living on Block Island is the opportunity to see our young students grow and flourish both in our school and within our close-knit community. And whereas Block Island students, in addition to their academic work, contribute every day to the health, well-being, and personality of our town. And whereas graduates of the Block Island School have always had a significant impact on our community and the world at large. And whereas each year our town celebrates the accomplishments of a graduating Block Island School class with great pride, and with the fond wish that our graduating seniors remember fondly their school years here and the support and love they've received from our community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the town council, on behalf of the town of New Shoreham, celebrates and congratulates the Block Island School class of 2024, Justin Cullen, Wyatt Hall, Blaze Hatfield, Bailey Payne, and Cora Ryan. Wishes this impressive class of graduates success along their chosen paths, and reminds the class that the residents of Block Island always stand ready to embrace them as they make their way on in life's journey. Can I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Yeah, I know. There's just a couple I can't look at directly while I'm reading it. So by way of brief introduction, this meeting came out of, I think, a number of meetings and conversations that we've all been having. Hey, Charlie. One of the catalysts is the school construction program that the financial town meeting approved a couple of town meetings ago. But also at council meetings regularly, I think the question comes up. I remember Charlie and I engaged in a conversation probably a month ago at a council meeting, sort of, what is the long-term physical infrastructure need? What does the school look like in the future? What's the model? What's the this? What's the that? And I don't have any grand ideas about that, but in talking to Jess and Marianne and my colleagues and, many of you, I think almost everybody in the audience, is it a conversation we need to be having as a community? So anyway, Marianne, do you want to just sort of bring us up to speed on the actual bidding, et cetera, et cetera? And this is part of the reason we switched to this table, was so that it didn't feel like we were speaking at people, that these were meetings to talk about stuff. So don't stand on ceremony. We can ask questions. We can talk about all this stuff. Thank you. Thanks, Marianne. Hey, Dan.
Oh my God, this is the microphone that's missing. That's on my desk.
Oh.
The top's missing and we found down the floor. That's right. I'm fine. It was just, I just noticed it and Tom put it on my desk. Just for way of background, under Rhode Island general laws with Rhode Island Department of Education, we have a 4-stage process whenever we do any kind of school construction in order to get the reimbursement. Currently, the school district has available to them a 35% reimbursement, and that reimbursement is on principal and interest. There are incentives available that were adopted a few years ago by the General Assembly, and they're still in place. I'm not going to get into the detail of the weeds of those incentives at this point. Stage 1 of it is a letter of intent, which the school department did. This process all started soon after I started my tenure here with the town. Stage 2 is putting together what we call a bid documents. Put them together, you have to have them reviewed by the Rhode Island Department of Education. They give you authorization to finally go out to bid. There also is a building committee that makes up, that meets almost monthly and more often if necessary. And we do have a lot of the members here today who are on the building committee. Charlie serves as our chair. We have Lisa. I saw Bill. Dan Warner came in, I think. Dan, did you come in? Yep, Dan Warner. There's myself, Lisa, and a few others that serve on that committee. Obviously, the superintendent Girardi is one of them. If you remember correctly, I advised the council that we did go out to bid and received bids back on February 21st, 2024. At that time, we received one bid of $12,992,000, $4 million higher than what we had funds budgeted. At that point, the building committee met as a group and discussed at length these bids and what would be the next step. We thought it would be best to rebid the project one more time. This was also discussed with the school committee, and they offered their consent and approval for us to rebid the project. We did rebid the projects with bids due just about a month ago on May 6th. During that process, there was another possible bidder that Charlie Weber spent a lot of time chatting with and encouraging to bid because we wanted to see if we could get another bid, especially with $4 million difference higher than budget. That's very significant, and you had nothing to compare it to. So we thought we were going to get a second bid. Unfortunately, we didn't. We only got the one bidder again. This time,
Same bidder?
the same bidder. The amount from last time was the $12,992,000. This time is $12,606,000, a difference of $300,000. Bottom line was still $4 million, give or take, over budget. So the building committee met once again, and we discussed it at length as to what to do next step. There's some under Rhode Island general laws, you're allowed to negotiate with the three lowest bidders. However, it talks about there has to be more than one bidder. So we reached out to the school reached out to their attorney, and she advised us that we can move forward with negotiating with the one bid. We recently just had a meeting, and we decided to proceed on that. And the building committee came up with the priorities of what we think we should get done. Obviously, as you can anticipate, the work that needs to be done in the gymnasium as it relates to the significant leaking that's going on there is an area that we will be addressing. Also, we've also decided as a committee, the building committee, that we will address the vermiculite. So those are two things. We also talk some educational things, but we just prioritize stuff. Currently, what's going on is our OPM, who is Peregrine, we've asked them to start negotiating with Marin. Marin Construction is the one-time bidder, also the last time. They're located out of Providence on Buttonholes, which is the Providence-Johnston border. That's what they work at. I think they have over 50 years of experience in the construction area, a lot of education, a lot of state facilities, National Guards, and things of that nature. So at that point, that's where we are. There's a small subcommittee of the building committee, which I'm on. We just had a meeting on Tuesday to discuss the scope of the work with the contractor, and we're finally ironing that out, and then they'll come back with pricing. The biggest price that we're seeing, the significant cost we're seeing, as you can anticipate and expect, is what we now identify as the Block Island factor. We know that's the case. In this case, it's a huge number. And we'll probably see, even though we're going through the process of negotiating with one, we cannot negotiate that Block Island factor. It costs money to get folks here. It costs money to get people to stay here. We're looking to begin some construction this summer. I can't for a fact state whether or not that'll definitely happen. We'll have to see how things go over the next few weeks. I would ask any of the committee member and the chair particularly, did I miss anything, or do you want to add anything to that? He's looking at me.
How far are you gonna go? Go far, it's free.
Charlie Weber. I'm a school committee member as well as the chair of the building committee. Miriam pretty much nailed all the highlights of it. The fixing of the gym, it was just under $1 million is what it came through as the bid at. That was 800 and some change, I believe, almost $900,000. That has to get done.
Was that a much bigger number than you thought it was going to be?
No, it's actually a little lower than I
That's what
thought it was going to be.
That was.
But can I just jump in?
Yeah, yeah.
That does include general conditions. So
Right.
That 1 million may go up.
It's going to go up
It's
definitely.
gonna go up pretty
because-
significant.
Right, because the general conditions, their day-to-day cost to be here,
I see.
you know, we had them break down 4 different categories. And one of them was the gym envelope, and making it so that it, you know, you couldn't swim in there on days.
Right.
Even though we want a pool, we just don't want it in our gym. So that, you know, that was one big thing that, you know, we need, that I feel we need to get done.
Yeah, no doubt.
15 years ago, we put a lot of money into that gym, and it's just getting destroyed
Yeah.
by Mother Nature. Like I spoke to you previously about, it's the wrong building, the wrong exterior cladding, I should say. The building itself is fine. We just need to make it weather tight, and the Block Island factor, as far as weatherproofing, it needs to be done, and not what they do in Ohio.
Yeah.
Beyond that, the next thing on that list that we broke down was the HVAC number, which was colossal. It was
Really?
$6.5 million, I think.
6 million.
Which it needs. You know, the school needs to bring us to up to the standards of certain air exchanges per hour, so that the teachers don't have to turn on the heat by cracking a ball valve. You know, get a properly working heating
Right.
system into place. So that, you know, speaking with the facilities manager about that, you know, he thinks that we can limp this along for the foreseeable future. And so through the building committee, when we talked about all this, and what we're getting at is to put $8 million into that building, and especially $6.5 million of it being HVAC, it doesn't make sense. I wouldn't do it in good conscience to any customer that I worked for. I wouldn't do it to the taxpayers. You're putting a $6.5 million HVAC system in a building that's not going to hold it, which is just going to make the system fail sooner than it needs to be. We came up with the idea of, you know, putting a new school up next to the new section to the north, and we could do that while school was still in session, and then take out the other side, take out the old building. The average lifespan of a school in this country is about 55 years.
Yes.
That building is 91 years old.
Yeah.
So I think we've gotten our money out of it. I just don't, like I said, I think we would be doing the taxpayers a disservice by putting any money besides fixing what we're going to keep, which would be the gym and the new part of the building, into that building. It just doesn't make any sense.
I have
We're
this feel, you and I
we're
talked
being
about this.
fiduciarily irresponsible by doing it.
You remember when we were talking about this at a council meeting, I don't know, in the last month or two. One of the things that concerns me, and Tristan and I were just talking about this, is are we gonna have, pick the number, a $10 million project on that school every 4 years?
No, you have 10 now. It's going to be 20 the next time.
20 the next, yeah, but
You know?
Exactly, sort of. How are towns, because I know there's tons of school construction going on. How are towns financing some of this?
So, you know, they're all going to the voters. You know, the most recent one that's close to us neighbor wise is South Kingston. They just approved the voters authorized $150 million bond issue. All schools throughout the state, they're doing this. The schools that you see throughout the state, a lot of them are the 1970 vintage, and those are considered young.
Right.
A lot of them are much older than that. Our school, for instance, the main building that you walk into is a 1933
Yeah.
infrastructure.
Yeah.
One other thing that I will add, and then Charlie, we were talking about this and it hit me. We called RIDE, Rhode Island Department of Education, and the gentleman that heads up the building projects for the state, we're inviting them down here because, again, your square peg in a round hole. One of the things they look at is they provide costs, and RIDE determine how much they're going to, like, if you go forward with the project that we estimated being like $100 million for a new school, they'll come in and look at the square footage, and they'll also look at the number of students, and they base it on square footage per number of students. Well, clearly,
Yeah.
Our classroom, if you have a
The
classroom of
math is never
5
gonna
kids,
work.
it doesn't work. It really doesn't work. And what some communities have done is when they said, no, based on your number of students, we're only going to reimburse you X amount of dollars because this is how many students you've had. Some communities, Barrington for one, had decided, fine, we want to build an auditorium. It's not based on number of students reimbursable, but we are going to go to the voters and ask them to reimburse. We've asked RIDE to come down here so that they can look at the school and also have this discussion with them,
Right,
that we are the infamous square peg and a round hole.
right.
And I don't think it's going to cost $100 million to build a
Right,
school.
right, right.
You know, again, like I said, then, you know, the next time we spend money on the school again, it's going to be twice as much as what we're spending now. You know, and, you know, we have our OPM kind of looking into square footage costs to what we need to replace to what the going rate is basically right now, you know, just to give us an idea, a ballpark on it to try to figure out exactly what it's going to cost us. And then we'll go from there. It's a 3 to 5 year plan if we go this route. You know,
Yeah.
we're just kind of spitballing right now on it because, you know, we're $4 million over budget on the Band-Aid that we're putting on.
Right.
You know, and it doesn't make any sense to me.
And what we'll have to do is we'll have to start the process all over again. There's 4 phases, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and stage 4. We're currently in stage 3, 2 almost into 3. We were going out for bid, you know, starting construction. We would have to start over again with a letter of intent and a new study and stuff like that. So 3 to 5 years, I think 3 is generous, 5 is going to be
So
probably more.
is it your sense that RIDE will reimburse us for, say we do, I'm just totally making these numbers up. We do $4 million for the gym and vermiculite removal and what have you.
We will get reimbursed on
Yeah.
that.
So we'll
Because
get
the plan's
reimbursed on
been, the plan's,
Any questions about this? About this, guys? I don't want
I was just wondering, what has the Department of Ed said about the air handler? Is that a mandatory? Is it unsafe now with the air exchange?
I'm not positive. Yeah. There is a standard for it. We don't meet the standard that they have. I don't know if what we're doing is exactly above, you know, it's obviously above the standard, but I don't think they have much of a say in it as long as we're above the standard. You know, it's not like the medical center where the Department of Health says you have to have this many air exchanges per hour, you know? But there is a standard for it. I just couldn't tell you offhand exactly what it is.
right.
And right now, there's more than one heating system in there, right? Or is there just one?
Well, there's kind of 2. There's the new boiler system that was put in 2 years ago that is in the gym area. And then there's the old one in the old part of the school. I'm not positive. Tom Reason would have to speak on this, but I think that the new boiler system is kind of running everything now. I'm not sure the old boiler's even functioning anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the one that's just off the gym that you can get to from the playground. There's the doors to it on the backside, that big smokestack that goes up the backside of the building there. It's in that room there.
When was the last assessment of the building done by engineers and other than people on the committee?
Assessment as far as what?
The whole building.
Yeah, I don't have that
Board
information.
report?
The Jacobs?
The Jacobs report.
RIDE did that with all schools.
For the-
And that goes back a good 6 or 7 years ago. However, at the last building committee, we were told that RIDE is gearing up to do it again.
Yep.
To assess all schools again. And that was called the Jacobs.
So I am, you know, philosophically, I think all in on doing it right once, you know, and building a new facility. The real, one of the questions I have is that an opportunity to build some consensus in the community about the model? You know, is it now pre-K through 12? Is it, you know, like to get community buy-in and support for whatever? Fisher's Island has a different model. You know, different small towns all over the country have different models that fit their community.
Absolutely. I mean, you're starting with a blank slate.
Yeah,
You know?
and I know, not to move into the nuts and bolts, but we have talked about on the council, reserving some of the remaining ARPA money for that kind of, building a community consensus on what we all want the school to be. Is that something people are interested in doing, or is that, am I barking up the wrong tree here? I feel like I started talking to myself a lot about this and,
Yeah, I mean, I think you absolutely have to bring the whole community in and see exactly what you said, what model you're going to go with. I mean, we would keep the newest part of the school, the high school area, the gym and all that, so you're only building the old part of the school again. You know what I mean? And it's, your layout, because we had talked about doing some of the HVAC now, and it's like, well, it doesn't make sense, because once we get somebody to come in here and look at this, those classroom layouts might change.
yeah,
Everything could get switched around now,
right.
to what makes more sense.
So there's a committee working with the library. The library wants to do a community needs assessment,
Mhm.
and it sounds like maybe this should be part of that. In terms of like community needs, like we have lots of conversations about community center, school would be part of this, librarying would be part of this. I think there's lots of components that could be drawn into this community needs assessment, senior services, lots of different pieces of our community. I think it would be make more sense than just doing an assessment on like, what do you want to see for the school? Because you're not going to get the buy-in from a lot of the community on the school.
Although I think I'm not
Alone.
disagreeing. I actually think part of the kind of building consensus in the community that we're likely to find is there's a lot more support for doing if for lack of a better description, a big project. If there are components of that big project that solve other community needs,
Yes, right.
You could do that.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. I mean, Lisa, you had your hand up. I don't want to.
By investing in the school, we can, just what you were saying, if we put an auditorium in, if we put a gym in, if we have a CTE program, career and technical program, those are things that are going to better the community in the long run. If we're training the kids here to become electricians, to become plumbers and all of these things, it's going to help benefit the school overall. Right now, we don't have any of these things. Our star rating is fairly low. It's growing, it's improving, but we need to start planning for not just what we need right now, but what the school and the community needs in the future too. Right now, we're squeezing the kids into classrooms. We have kids working in rooms that probably shouldn't be working in them to begin with because they're too small. We need to think about the future. I have a whole list of all of the things. I brought this up at the last building committee meeting of the needs of what we need to grow as a school. So it's beyond just like repairs, but it's a much bigger thing.
Yeah.
Right. And I guess what I'm saying is grow as a school, but also grow as a community.
Yes.
Right. So we keep saying, oh, now we have broadband, more people are going to stay, but we're not offering them anything else. Right. We don't have any restaurants open in the winter. We don't have any activities for people to do. So the only bone you have can't be broadband, right? We have to offer other things to sort of round it out, but it's the same for the school.
And
So-
if we make the school, if we have such a unique school to begin with, that in a unique environment, we can offer things here that no other school in the state of Rhode Island offer: a hospitality program, a marine biology program, all of these things.
Mhm.
But we have to have the space and we have to have the internal resources to be able to do that. We could make this a school like Fisher's Island where kids pay to come to our school. And that's how they offset some of the costs that they have there. They're a New York public school that is also a charter school for Connecticut residents. There's a lot more that's involved in that with
Yeah,
the
yeah.
ferry system and having housing for teachers. So that's kind of a bigger issue, but those are important issues that are going to factor into the development of our school too. So it's building, the three big things that we have going on in the school are the building, the housing, and the ferry.
And so is
The
that something we look at too, being a charter school? Instead of,
I wouldn't recommend us becoming a full-fledged charter school because we lose out on some of the state funding. What's that? Well, I mean, but like, but you know what? Oh, $5 we can stay. But I should say, we lose out on some of the resources. Is that a better word? Resource.
But the,
But it's something that, you know,
so I mean, to me, it would be really helpful to know, you guys may already know this, but okay, say you declare yourself a charter. Does that have implications for reimbursement for school construction costs? If you have if you have a model that doesn't exist anywhere and that's intriguing. I mean, I literally, I guess my point is, that's why I think we need to do a little bit of engaging with experts, not only in kind of the nuts and bolts of sussing out the community consensus, but also kind of what the potential models are.
I think
Because this is of course the classic kind of architecture form following function, right? It's you might do something very different if you find out that there's no desire to spend $25 million on a new school infrastructure, and we have to sort of back up and pick another model. It's just,
Mm.
I sort of feel like I want to not, this is just me, not be here in a year and say, boy, we really ought to think about what we want to do with this thing. Let's, and that we'll trip and we'll stumble and, people will get pissed and, but I think we got to do this as a community. We owe it to ourselves and to the kids.
I'll say, as far as the building goes, we need to be active in getting something in the plans within the next 5 years. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
my ceramics kids were sloshing through water in their class
Yes,
today.
yes.
The mortar is crumbling, bugs are crawling right through the walls, and it's crumbling
Yeah.
up there. We had a mold guy come out and do testing about 2 weeks ago. We haven't gotten the results back yet from what Bob had said, but as I was talking with the technician, and I was like, well, are you seeing evidence of mold? I knew the answer because I can see it. He's like, oh yeah, it's everywhere. So, I mean, it's bad. It's not safe right now.
Right.
And it's also not 21st learning environment
No,
either
not
by
at all.
any stretch of the imagination,
No.
the classrooms and
I
the
mean,
building, the facility.
I actually think it would be worthwhile to do a field trip for.
Oh,
people to
absolutely.
see
That's
some
the
of
only
those
way you're
new
going to-
Schools on
yeah.
the mainland and, and what those look like, and how the physical infrastructure of the school reflects the educational approach. Dan, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you must have some thoughts about steps and approaches.
I do. What would you like to know?
Don't be shy, Dan. You got to come to the microphone though.
I guess so for me, Dan, one of the questions I have, because it's my nature, is how do you do this well in a community? How do you I would love to be in a place where this is an exciting moment for the town, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Because for me, this is exciting. This is like what we would probably call, a legacy kind of thing, where we sort of rolled up our sleeves as a community and did something that really moved things along.
So I would say, what everyone's saying here, it's all true. If we want to build that excitement, we got to get people off the island and over to the mainland. And we could choose any number of building projects and go see them and talk to their communities and talk to their teachers and their kids. And, you know, simultaneously, as we're doing that, we start deciding what we want for our community
Yes.
and what's going to work for us and take the best of take the best of a lot of different things and create the wonderful new Block Island School. I think you're right in being excited. This is an exciting time. And, you know, Lisa, you know, hit the nail on the head. We got to move beyond the current Block Island School.
Yeah.
We got to be thinking, you know, 10, 15, 25 years in the future. And you're right about our kids. We're doing it for our kids.
Yeah.
And, you know, that has to be our focus. But I think the first thing we need to do is build excitement in the community and start taking people to the mainland. Eden Park is what I was saying over in the corner. And there are places out there and we should be excited. We have all the ingredients we need to be a great school.
Right.
And, you know, the building is just the value added.
So here's the, you know, sort of a very practical question. And this is literally a question of, you know, thoughts on this. We all have lives. We're all busy. We all have, you know, like, what, how, you know, Tristan can't do this as a full-time job. Molly can't. Jess can't. Annie can't. You know, do we put together a working group and retain someone to help us who you know, who has to wake up every morning and say, what are we going to do today on moving the Block Island School ball forward? You know, I don't know what that looks like, but it seems to me that you know, whatever, having a council or a school committee meeting, you know, every couple of months where we say, gosh, we got to do something. What we have to do, I think, is actually do something. And I don't know what that ends up looking like, whether it's a small working group of, you know, a couple from the community, a couple from the council, a couple from the school committee, you know, I really don't know what that looks like, and I'd love to hear what people think.
It can be multiple things. We can have multiple groups. You know, let's tap into the expertise you have here on the island. Going over and visiting places, most schools are more than welcoming.
Yeah.
And so we could send multiple groups to different schools and compare and contrast and try to come up with a plan. But again, along with that, what do we want? Mission driven. What's our mission? What do we want our school to be? And what's going to be our focal point moving forward?
And that gets into community forum.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, I actually think forming another committee might be counterproductive.
Yeah, that's great.
Because, you know, I'm involved in this group
Yep.
that with people from the library and the community right now to work on a community needs assessment. Lisa's got the ideas committee at the school. There's the committee that worked on preschool applications. Like, we have a lot of committees of people who are already including the school committee and the town council, who are all sort of like, let's move forward. I don't know whether we need another
Somebody's got to
committee.
drive the bus, I guess, is my
Yeah.
short, you know, because otherwise we're all going to be passengers on the bus and waiting for it to start driving down the roads. Yes, well, you next, Jess. Yeah, you next.
I was just.
Yeah, whomever.
No, I was just gonna say that I think you had talked about there's like consulting companies or there's people that can come in and sort of facilitate the discussion.
Yes.
And that's something that the ARPA money could be used for to sort of get the framework and get the ball rolling and say, no, it's not a committee that you need, it's a whatever. So something like that might be somebody professional in the professional space that does this might be helpful.
Yep. Hello.
Hi. Sarah Sudine, parent of a Block Island School graduate, K through 12, former rec board member, 10 years, and day custodian at the school. I think thinking big picture, obviously bringing the community in, what they want, what their needs are, as far as somebody lighting a fire who is not creating another committee. The rec department uses different areas of the school 7 days a week, some days from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. You know, you got 2.5 custodians. It's tough to keep up. So maybe the first thing is to fire up some pickleball players. They can get the party started and get some excitement happening. But it's, I would love to see what the community wants. People have talked about rec centers and pools forever. Well, this is a chance, you know? Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense.
Okay.
Totally makes sense. And I didn't view this meeting as determinative of like, okay, here's the plan that we're gonna do. But I do think we have to come up with 3 or 4 things that we want to make sure that we're doing and we have on an agenda, you know, in a month, or whatever, 2 weeks. And to me, those things are who's out there, both in terms of physical infrastructure planning, but to me right now, more importantly, in terms of what are the model options, and someone who can work with Dan, Bob, school committee, faculty, parents, grandparents. Because I know there might be a model and approach out there, and I guess this is to Dan's idea about sort of touring. The more you see, the more you know. But this is not my, this is so not my area of expertise. I don't know. I mean, someone tells me that they went, you know, that Fisher's Island was cool. And I'm kind of like that day, I'm sort of like, wow, that sounds like a cool model. And then the next day somebody says, you know, no, we should be having high school in Narragansett. Literally, I don't know what the right model is, or what the community wants in a model. So finding someone who can drive those discussions, and you know, within the community, I think would be really, really helpful.
So I'm not going to disagree with that,
Yeah,
but I'm going to say I think that's step 3.
okay.
I think that community assessment survey should come first. I think in the meantime, we could be looking at other schools, absolutely, and seeing what sort of structural models are great and what sort of learning models are great. But, you know, so one of the problems Narragansett has right now, right, is that their school population is shrinking every year. Ours is too. So we need to look at that as well, right? So if we're going to invest in this building, what do we want in this building, right? If recreation is using that building 12 hours out of the day some weeks, we need to plan for that, right? If we don't have, you know, like we don't have a community center, how do we take the information from our community about what they want and fold that into this building that we're talking about constructing? I mean, talking right now, right? But like, it's what we all want to have something that functions well for the whole community. But I think first we have to say to the community, what do you want? But the second thing I think has to happen, and I'm just going to harp on this thing, you guys are all going to squeal. I think the school committee has to be broadcasting their meetings. Our wider community cannot watch a school committee meeting. Our wider community relies on our local newspaper And I don't know if you guys get misquoted or your comments get convoluted in the newspaper as often as mine do, but I hope not. People need to be able to go to YouTube and be like, what did she really say? What was that conversation about? Or did they discuss this? So I really think we need to move forward to that and have a lot of transparency and clarity for the community. We're going to ask the community to spend all this money and yet they can't listen to one of your meetings. I think that's a problem.
Just one quick point to your point about transparency. There was 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, an invitation for, it was the financial town meeting evening, an invitation to the public to come and tour the school. I was stoked. I was really excited for people to see some of the things that folks don't see every day. And I believe there were 6 people. And former teacher, so I'm all about shining that spotlight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
I think for me, I would like to have a clearer sense of what the library is doing on a community needs assessment, because I think I just need to know what it is because with great respect to the library, and I have the utmost respect, I don't have a clear sense of what they're assessing, what the methodology is going to be.
So the second meeting is next week. It's only the second meeting.
Mhm.
So, yeah, but I will send you that information.
Some Pat? Yes.
I sat here and listened to about all of the different stakeholders, particularly the community center, the library, trying to find out what other schools are doing off island, et cetera. And I think the most valuable information that we could possibly gather is to look at maybe the last 4, 5 years of graduates of our school. And I am certain that there's a document questionnaire out there that is professional, that gets to the points we really want to know is how are we succeeding if we are, and what those students feel we might do better, get them prepared for whether it's post-education or working in the trades. And then I'd be very specific because some of them may not know how we could have perhaps done it a little better to get them ready and to elevate the dignity of the trades. I don't think we do that well. We say, oh, it would be really
Across the
nice.
culture.
And so I would set out to look for a really good questionnaire document and bring the kids in and tell them that this is the most valuable part of what we are beginning to look at for the future of maybe their children here and all children on Block Island. And that will change in time. So I think that has got to be a starter. In terms of bringing in some leadership, consultancy, et cetera, that is only as good as the respect that that person would be given for
Yes.
coming up with many different ideas. And this is not the best community to say everyone then falls in line behind that, but we deal with that. We deal with it. But I think that's a tough one. As far as going off island and seeing other programs, I think that's terrific because those of us in this room have no knowledge of, you mentioned a program. I don't go off island. I don't even know whatever it's about. So we really have to be immersed in some excitement, but you mentioned time, the time that not only teachers have, you as a school, you as a council, the school committee has. How are we going to facilitate that? And I just think
Well, I think in the fall, we pick a day and give people plenty of notice and we travel around.
I would also suggest doing multiple schools.
A what?
I do multiple schools. Eden
I would
Park,
too.
Eden
Yeah,
Park is
yeah, I
is
think
an
we could book a
elementary.
day.
Yes.
I would do the
Yeah.
high schools. I
Right.
would do multiple
Yeah.
schools.
Right.
I
And
agree.
there are schools like Block Islands in this country that perhaps because of the distance they are from larger metropolitan
Yes.
systems have to deliver education in a way that's meaningful. So I really would perhaps make it a junior and senior project in the year ahead to be the civil engine, no, it's not civil engineers, to be the engineers of what's to come in a serious fashion and talk about where would you want to go? You want to go to Montana? You want to go to Jackson Hole? I mean, where do you want to go to think there's a school? So maybe that's an essay. Where is there a school district like ours? I mean, I think there can be some creative ideas that involve kids and involve parents. And I mean all parents, not just the voices that come to meetings, every meeting, whether it's library or here, but you speak their language because that appears to me to be the growing population that we have here. We have a population where the parents need to really, I think, be brought in more. So those are just some ideas. And I love the idea of preschool. Education is something that takes place really from birth on, and we should look at where, and I've heard at some of the school committee meetings, is there a level playing field out there for the children who are coming into our schools? Some get to go to preschool, some speak only Spanish at home or whatever. And I think we want to look at that as part of what we can do as an education program. And then Molly's idea, this is because of the small community, I do think we have to look at the needs across the board that everyone is behind and contributes to. Not giving myself, anyway, that's just
Terrific.
many years. Thank you.
Any other? Annie?
So I think around 6 or 7 years ago, Jan Wampler, and I think there was a lot of community participation. He drew up plans for the community center, and was it for the school too?
No.
And that was up at Faulkner.
Wasn't really.
Oh, yeah, because maybe that's something eventually we take a look at. Because I think there was a lot of community participation in that. Just a thought.
Stephanie. So good to see you.
One thing that I'm hearing a lot of is getting community input, but inviting people to meetings to hear what they have to say. When I was in North Carolina, I worked on 2 schools being opened. And rather than just inviting people in to hear what they have to say, it's going out.
Yes.
And it's actually interviewing people to hear what they have to say, what they
Yes.
want to. So rather than just inviting them in, you have to go out and interview them. And we do have a diverse population that they were not necessarily always represented. We do have a Hispanic population that don't really get heard in our community a lot. So we should be looking and going out rather than just inviting into meetings. We need to actually
1,000%. That's
going-
kind of- that's
going
a
out and
example
outreaching.
Of what I was saying about time, you know, you
Yeah.
gotta have someone who does that stuff.
Right.
because-
And then, I mean, we have enough community events that people are there, that somebody should be there talking to people and getting their input rather than just inviting them to, you know, a meeting, because you're not going to get the information that you actually want. You're not going to get the honest and a full broad spectrum of what people
Yep.
envision their future education to be.
Right. I think
It
that's-
doesn't get a real thing. And on another note, as I know this is shocking, but I'm a data nerd just like my husband. And although not necessarily, Pat talked about collecting information from our post-secondary graduates. One thing that, you know, our school data and our star rating, as we know, is not as high as that we would like to see. And past few years, I've been collecting that data and looking at it, and it is improving, which is great. One thing that I have noticed is that, you know, we're hearing a lot of great things about our post-secondary students that go to college and they're being highly successful, even though their scores may not be the best when they're within the school. I think we do also have to celebrate the fact that one of the greatest things that I'm noticing is that our students, they learn to advocate for themselves. And I think that does translate into a very good college experience for these students. So even though they may not have those strong foundational academic skills, they do have those advocacy skills that translate well into a college environment. So I think that's something that we need to also recognize. You know, the scores themselves may not be great, but there are skills that they are learning that do translate into a college environment. So just something to take note of. That was it.
How about if we? And I'll- Just threw a draft out there and.
I won't be meeting on July 6th. A month from now is July 6th. So gonna be busy that week.
But I don't want to wait until September.
No,
You know.
I agree. It's not the 4th of
So
July.
much of what we do is work our asses off, and then forget
Yeah.
about things while we're working our asses off. You
Yeah.
know?
And then I don't know if this is too soon, but this is Willie's question about the ARPA funds. Is that available for outside consultation or getting
Yes.
the assessment we can?
Yes.
Use
We
that
got
money.
a tiny amount of part. I think it was, spent a chunk of it. For this conversation, so we got some. Now it's gonna see. Jacob's report was state.
I don't care about YouTube. I don't watch YouTube. The Jacobs report was put together by the state to come into every school in the whole state to say what it would cost to repair things and what it would be cost if you just started from scratch to bring everything up to. So that was done almost 10 years ago. And so, and they're going to do it again.
Yeah, the school should have it.
Yeah, it's,
It'll
yeah,
be on
it'll be in the
Rise.
superintendent's office. It's about 4 or 5 volumes, about 6 inches thick. But it goes through every nuts and bolts of the school. So that might be a way to start, so looking at that. But anyway,
It's on Ride's website.
and I think the bidding process is not right. I think you have to come up with, and you know, maybe I don't know that much, but maybe you have to come up with your design. Find somebody who wants to build it and then go and ask the town for money. Because then you know how much money you actually need instead of asking for money and then 5 years later, you're getting your bidding documents and you don't have enough money. So, because it's going to take 5 years.
Right.
All those in favor of this?
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. I think this is really important.